All right, everybody, welcome to the fourth. That was a terrible fade out on that intro music by me. The fourth episode here of the Empire in Exile podcast. We are. What's up, Josh? How's it going, man?
I'm awesome, man.
I went to Vegas and didn't die. I didn't get the Rona, nor did I get murdered. So,
nice.
Well, I'm officially in the prime symptom window, and it hasn't happened yet. So. Hopefully,
So death by riot, the Rona, or alcohol poisoning. Which one is still the most dangerous to get in Las Vegas?
Las Vegas. This weekend, none of the above, because it was pretty empty. I had never been there before, so this is my first time in town. But the fact that apparently it wasn't shoulder to shoulder pedestrian traffic on the streets wasn't bad, and like you don't have to wait like 5 hours to eat it anywhere, or can't eat anywhere without a reservation, was atypical. So that's what we had happen, and we made it back, and no one died. Saw an aftermath of a riot, didn't see a riot itself. A bunch of damage and destruction to the federal courthouse in the area, which they were in the middle of cleaning up when we walked past it. But
yikes.
Other than that, yeah, we're good. I made it back. Work almost decided they wanted me to quarantine like 2 days, made me fill out some like, where did you go on your vacation? We may want you to quarantine. It's like, guys, I've already been back in the office 2 days. It's kind of pointless now.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome to big corporate HR, right?
Yeah. Joseph and the Shepherds. That drives me crazy, man. I don't know how.
Isn't that awesome where you work for a small business? You don't have to mess around with that crap.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just,
Well, I at least have my boss in my corner. He's like, this is dumb. But they sent me this form and like, you need to fill this out before you go. The day after I left.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're the two guys. Well, you don't watch movies, but from Office Space where they're talking about.
I have actually seen Office Space, so yeah, I know what you're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like I'm that, like, next-door neighbor that when you're talking about this stuff, it's like, I asked you if you got the Rona? I reckon someone would get their ass kicked if they said that on my job.
Forgot about yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, on that topic, we're going to discuss what the hell's going on around here. Kind of current events here and what our thoughts are. We're only recording this a couple days before it'll go public, so... Assuming, we're recording this on Friday night, the 12th. It goes live Tuesday, the 16th. So, if something's changed from what we said, I'm not editing the episode after the fact. You're just going to deal with the fact that we recorded it 3.5 days before it goes live. So,
right.
Anywho.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we get visited by Martians between then and now,
or if
then we got egg on our face, I guess.
Or if in the Chaz or Antifa stand, depending on your perspective there in Seattle, gets busted up this weekend, it hadn't at the time, so.
Right, it did not.
So let's actually start with that. So some protesters, hippies, whatever you want to call them, have declared a autonomous zone. They conquered, I say with air quotes here, a section of Seattle, downtown Seattle in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. They've declared it the no cop autonomous zone, and plan to hold it until I don't know when, but
indefinitely.
Yeah, indefinitely
until they get bored.
I forget what they call it, but anyway, it's hippy dippy bullshit that only because we're indulging them at this point is still in existence. So they started out day one. This is my reading of the situation. Day one, oh yeah, we're gonna have a hippie jam band festival, man. It's gonna be great. We're like just gonna come here and make art and free love and like live in harmony. It's gonna be great. Day two, they had a warlord. A local rapper / suspected human trafficker, alleged human trafficker, decided that him and his crew were to come in to be the new police. I mean, and he actually declared himself warlord, and it's funny, and started beating people up for not doing tagging that wasn't approved by the group. Day 3, they had a race war, and their attempt at gardening is hilarious. And growing food is hilarious. Have you seen any of the pictures of their attempts at agriculture?
No,
So,
I have not.
in some green space in there, they've thrown down a bunch of what looks like potting soil on top of grass. Didn't bother to cut the grass back. Just threw it down and planted a bunch of like
this
herbs.
is horticulture at best.
Yeah, and planted a bunch of like herbs and lettuce. Which, by the way, the effort to plant said lettuce will result in a 95% calorie deficit. So, they didn't even go for like root vegetables or squashes or anything like that, which are actually calorie positive for the effort put into required to grow them.
Yeah, I mean, the
lettuce
lettuce is
and
supposed to be
herbs.
there. I mean, lettuce, that's supposed to help you out with like your carrots, your radishes, and your fried chicken or grilled chicken. I mean, this is something that it's the food's supposed to hang out with, not really like the food itself.
Well, it's like a head of lettuce, believe it or not, is like 10 calories. Like the whole
Sure.
head is like 10 calories. It probably will cost you 100 calories of the energy to grow it, if it grows at all, in your potting soil on top of grass, and it doesn't immediately get absorbed by the mature grass underneath and just pokes to the surface and eats it, essentially. Oh, and by the way, there's estimated like 500 people taking part of this. Their growth plot is like a 50 by 50 circle-ish, square-ish plot. And now they're begging the outside world for food. The funny part is they've started. They have a border fence. They have a border fence. They check
Sure.
IDs and started deporting people. So much for a.
Dang, Orange Man good up in here.
So, whatever. And quite frankly, from as someone, I wouldn't identify as a Republican, but would more lean that way. Let them fuck their own shit up. This is an entirely deep blue city. Let them fucking be an example on this is why we don't placate, or let intellectual children dictate policy. Because this is the kind of shit that happens. The no cops thing had a warlord in 2 days.
Yeah, hey, I'm definitely not a Republican. As a libertarian, leaning towards anarchist, I think it's hilarious. I mean, I absolutely love it.
Well, they tried to say it was going to be like a anarcho-leftist, utopia, and it went into a authoritarian leftist hellhole in 3 days.
Well,
it didn't even take there wasn't some great revolution or something like that, or a period of peace. It took less than 3 days.
I mean, Dorf, like you had mentioned, I mean, it only exists because.
Because the state of
are
Washington and the city of Seattle are afraid to crack down on them because unfortunately they've lost the local politicians have already lost the propaganda war on this. Like if they do anything but placate to these guys, they'll lose their next election because you beat up the hippies, man. That's bad, and they'll get taken over by somebody else. So the local politicians aren't going to do anything. So Orange Man might have to be bad and be like, all right, federal troops are going to have to bust this shenanigan up.
I'm very much against the militarization of police, but police don't have to be militarized to break up that shit show.
Well, there is actually an armed contingent of, I don't think they're officially with the John Brown Gun Club, but there is an armed contingent inside. But there's a reporter that somehow has snuck in and stayed undercover in there, probably because he's from townhall.com. His name's Julio Rosas, mostly because he's a little Hispanic looking dude.
Sure.
But he's if you would call him a partisan Republican, but he just talks Spanish when he's around anybody because he's a fluent Spanish speaker, and actually I believe an active duty Marine as well. He's inside recording and reporting on this stuff, and they his assessment of it is their what they think is a effective siege defense is laughable, And if we wanted to, like 3 guys with a combat loadout could take this whole place down in about 15 minutes.
I think I think he's grossly overestimating their ability. I mean, to say 3 guys with a combat loadout, I think me and 3 of the guys I go deer hunting with could.
Well, I mean, there's actually some pretty decent firepower in there, but it's all LARPers who don't know what they're doing. Is what his assessment of it was. So,
I'm standing behind the statement.
Well, it's like a 6-block rate, so it's a 6-block radius, and believe it or not, the folks in Portland, Oregon, are trying to do this as well. Which Portland gonna Portland, so, but. It's just funny. I find it entirely funny, and the why I this is going back to our previous podcast that we've done together. Why I've always said that like anarchism as a plan won't work is exactly playing out here. You leave yourself weak. If you could abolish all government and start over, sure you could do some sort of or any sort of organization. You could establish an anarchist society or an anarchist collective or syndicate or whatever you want to call it. But if you're not going to start over like that, you leave yourself over to be conquered by a warlord on day 2.
Dorf, I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you at the same time, because as somebody that has advocated for this type of thing in the past, that's kind of my position, is that I'm all for this sort of thing. I'm all for defunding the police, for instance. I'm all for a lot of things. But the idea that we could trust the Republicans or the Democrats to do it is hilarious.
There's a guy, I know you and I both follow him on Twitter. I think he technically has a distributor relationship or something with the Blaze, Eric July. You familiar with him? Yeah. I'm watching some of his stuff on this last week. He's like, I'm totally for defunding the police and, essentially privatizing it. But they want to just keep that same money and make the woke police. They don't want to get rid of police. They want to institute the woke police. And, it'd be one thing if we could disband the police or whatever and you get all that tax money back. But they ain't talking about that. So, my favorite thing with Eric is... well, first off, didn't know he had a band until very recently. Awesome music. It's an ANCAP metalcore band, which
sweet.
You need to look into that if you're into
I
that.
do need to look into that.
Yeah, if you're into that type of music at all, they actually published a song today. Good. It's really good. But yeah, an ANCAP rock band.
Nice.
You don't see that often.
No, you don't.
And they anyway, he was like, what about...
I think I was in one of those, by the way, for back in the day. Yeah, I was in a band called the Pigs that had similar ideas. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, getting it back on topic here, he's like, what about my roads and my police or whatever? He's like, well, don't threaten me with a good time, man, because like we'll defund that now, and I'll be happy. Thanks. But they're still gonna take the taxes. You're still gonna take your tax money, and they just want to make the woke police. They don't actually want to eliminate policing, state policing in general. But
about 17 seconds after I had heard the cries to defund the police, 17, 18 seconds, something like that, I saw my first social media post about defund the police and give it to the public schools. And I just instantly, no!
We spend like 25% of the overall government spending is on education. I'm sorry. I'm done. Like, no, they don't need any more of my money.
You picked the one thing worse than the police.
Yeah. And quite frankly, in this age of interconnectedness, hell, we're doing this podcast and we're probably about 200 miles apart, roughly. Not sitting in the same room. But at the same time, I've done this podcast with you previously when I've been on the road for work, and I've been over 1,000 miles away. So, in that age of connectivity, and as we're seeing, like, kids can be, I know that the ideal situation is not homeschooling for most people, especially if both parents work. But we could totally revolutionarily redo the primary education system here. The only reason where I'm against that, not going entirely like online school or homeschool, it's so much of what you learn growing up, and the biggest value, in my opinion, of going to school in general, not necessarily public school, but just being educated in a group with other people, is how to interact with others, and that socialization and your people skills. What you pick up and the knowledge of stuff like that isn't terribly functional for most people in order to navigate their way through the world as an adult. We don't teach the functional shit, and that's wrong, and different show. But the idea that I don't want to disband the current model of schooling entirely, because the biggest value what you get is learning how to deal with people. Because as we can see with the Zoomers who are coming out and who are children of the internet exclusively, they have no people skills. They're fucked. And the idea that we would do that on a mass scale is not a great idea, in my opinion. So, anyway, schools don't need any more money. They got plenty of fucking money. Produce, once again, and here's another thing. Back in the current events, police reform. So much of this has to do with power, of public sector unions. Why are bad cops allowed back in? Because you can't fire them.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of them. Why was this the guy who was had his knee on the neck of George Floyd? Why was he still employed after how many excessive force complaints? Or,
right.
At the point where Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, when she was still a federal prosecutor, didn't prosecute this same guy for an excessive use of force or police brutality charge. Because they can't fire him. They have to, in order to get fired from a police department with a decently strong union, you have to be able to throw them behind bars. It has to reach the level of where you're going to incarcerate somebody in order to be able to fire them. You look at I'm going to get so much shit for this, I guarantee it. But the gal in Louisville with the no-knock raid that got shot and killed. They no-knock raided the wrong house. Her boyfriend fired upon officers thinking they were breaking and entering. He was killed.
Right.
They were, I think they both perished in the incident, if I remember correctly. Those cops are still employed. And they killed an innocent bystander, not even the guy who was firing at them. I can understand, you're right. Fired at in the heat of the moment, you're going to fire back. I get that. That's,
sure.
That is understandable and explainable.
Mm-hmm.
But, they're still employed. They can't fire them.
Yeah.
Because the damn unions are too strong.
Well, I mean, that's a case against unions that no one has ever wanted to talk about for years.
Exactly, and quite frankly, I have a
It's why we got bad cops. It's why we got bad teachers. It's why we got bad auto workers.
Yeah, the facility I work in on a day-to-day basis, the blue collar staff is repped by the UAW. Trust me, man. I think about 3 people out of the 50 people in my building that are union would actually have a job if they were, without union protections, because they're that lazy or that shitty of workers. 3 out of 50. 3.
I would never mention a name when it comes to this, Dorf, but for somebody like me who has 25 years of construction experience, every single former union guy that I've tried to work with over the years has lasted not a week.
Well, okay, so I want to differentiate between public and private sector unions. Private sector, you do you. I think net at this point in society, labor unions are a net negative. They're they're almost exclusively a political organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they started in their rise, ultimately, very valid. It got the labor it pushed forward the labor standards necessary to produce the society we have today. You like your weekend, you like standard vacation, you like all that stuff. safety standards, et cetera, et cetera. The unions were a large driving force behind that, and I'm willing to acknowledge that as a anti-union guy. But at this point, it's a cover charge to work at a place where it's a mandatory donation to a political party you don't necessarily vote for.
Right.
And that's another. So I'm in Indiana. I don't know that people know that here on this podcast, but I'm in Indiana. The union labor force, the UAW, is practically a political action committee of the Democrat Party and has been for many years.
Decades.
Many, many decades. The membership of the local here, I swear to God, is 75% Republican. Which it's crazy, and it's just like, chatting with these guys. I'm friendly with a bunch of them, even though I'm technically management. So I'm the enemy. I'm still friendly with these guys. They absolutely hate everything that the UAW stands for, and it's crazy. They're like, but it's the cover charge to work at arguably one of the area's best employers. If you're in the unskilled labor or skilled trades, you're not going to get a better compensation package than you will at one of the union employers in the county. You're not going to. That's just the way the world. I mean, hell, these guys get doing roughly the same work in this facility. They get an average of $35 an hour to pack a fucking box, where the guys across the street make $12 with no benefits. Like, they don't realize how good they have it. But anywho, God, we've gotten so off track here. But anyway,
we have. Bring us back. I'm
going to bring us back to where this means. What's going on now is, if you want to be able to reform police, you don't even necessarily need to do any sort of broad sweeping legislative agenda or defund police or anything like that. You just need to kneecap unions. And unfortunately, a member of my family here is a member of the public sector union. He's a firefighter. Unfortunately, we're going to get cornered here into making all public sector unions are bad or good statement. I honestly think, in general, actually even union membership for police officers is a good idea. Same thing for firefighters, EMS, etc. White-collar unions within government, fuck off. Go away. We don't need you. You unnecessarily drive up costs and expenses without doing anything. Go away. But if you want to reform policing, make it real easy. Just kneecap the fucking public sector unions, and we're in a lot better place instantly, where municipalities can get rid of bad actors. If you want to reform education, you don't even need to send any more money. Kneecap the union. But that'll never happen, because Democrats, that would be a big voting block that they'd be losing, because you're betraying the union who helps pay for you to be there. And Republicans will, the classic, you'll be anti-education, where just like anytime they, somebody right of center talks about healthcare or something like that, it's like you always want to kill grandma. It's the stereotypes there. It's ingrained. You're not going to be able to escape it with the vast majority of people. So that's the reason we're stuck where we are. I mean, you could do that. I mean, George Floyd was murdered. That was, even if he had underlying health conditions, you don't put or he had drugs in his system or whatever. You don't put your knee on his back to after he's restrained. Even if he was resisting arrest. 9 minutes or 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I could see it for a minute and a half, but like, why are we still doing it at 8:40? Why are we doing it that long? The guy's subdued. He's obviously not a threat anymore. What are we doing? Like, you're not Judge Jared Light here. You don't get to be judge, jury, and executioner. You're not Judge Jared Light, where you don't get to kill. You don't have the carte blanche to kill people.
Judge Dredd Light, hell, that was Judge Dredd Ultra.
Right? Well, and in reality, it turned out to be Judge Dredd Ultra. I mean, he didn't gore the guy.
Premier, maybe I could say.
Yeah.
But
Judge Dredd Exile.
Yeah, sure, that'll work. Judge Red Ice. Do they still sell that stuff? Um, but yeah, I mean, with that, you're talking about, at least Judge Dredd told you what you were guilty of before he
left,
busted a
yeah.
cap, and that's the problem I have with it all.
And here's the thing: the death of George Floyd's a tragedy. Derek Chauvin, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's going to go to jail for the rest of his life, as he should. The three other guys around, I'm sorry, trying to get them as accomplices. I don't think that'll stick. I doubt they'll ever work in law enforcement again. But those guys, I doubt, will spend a day in jail. And
Yeah.
And even if they are found guilty at the local level, they'll win on appeal and they'll never spend a day in jail. The idea that that's okay, like, nobody thinks that's okay. The other idea that just cops shoot black people, indiscriminately, willy-nilly, just isn't true. You look at the data last year, there was 9 officer-involved shootings that ended up in the death of the suspect of unarmed black men. Like, 4 of them were involved where the suspect was trying to hit somebody, the public or the officer, with a car. Like, several others were mistakes where the officer is going to go to jail for it. The trial isn't concluded because it's too recent. If there's any sort of extreme felony charge, the trial process is extended and it hasn't been adjudicated yet. And then there's like 2 others where it was extenuating circumstances. It was a justified shooting. Like, the idea that just people go around getting capped all the time it's just not backed up by data. That may have been the case 50, 60, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. It sure ain't today. And that's not the only gripe. I will admit of the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's another thing we need to just differentiate between. There's the Black Lives Matter movement, and then there's BLM Incorporated. BLM Incorporated is a political action committee that's ethno-Marxism.
Sure.
The BLM movement, which you're seeing very much be at the front now, and the BLM Incorporated, which it's not technically a corporation, but I'll refer to them as that. Those are 2 separate things, despite their shared name. My criticisms of BLM Incorporated are primarily the criticism of BLM Incorporated. The criticism, I have much less criticism for BLM the movement. They're 2 very, very different things. They have some crossover, but they're very, very different.
So what's it all? What?
Go ahead, sorry.
Let's wrap it back, Dorf. What the hell's really going on here?
There has been a loosely affiliated underground it's not even anarcho-communist, but let's just call it communist underground that has finally got the balls to come forward and try and enact a Maoist-style revolution in the United States, and they're using Black Lives Matter as human shields.
Interesting, yeah.
Because they're ducking inside, taking advantage of the concept of allyship, where they can duck in and out, try and bring about the communist uprising, and using minority protesters as human shields. Quite frankly, plenty of the let's call it the mass protest movement of BLM, plenty of valid criticisms. Absolutely plenty of valid criticisms. BLM corporate is Marxism with a race component. That's not a great organization, and then we haven't even gotten to the fundraising for that. You see any of the fundraising, the you donate to BLM? Well, guess where that goes? Act Blue. It's a political action committee, essentially run by the Democrat Party. So you by donating to Black Lives Matter, congratulations, you've donated to the committee to elect Joe Biden. Congrats, you've been fooled again.
Yes. The guy that wrote the crime bill. The guy that wrote the
Yeah.
Patriot Act.
Oh, that, heaven forbid somebody is a free thinker. If you don't vote for him, you ain't black. That's not even like an extrapolation.
Yeah, that's
he
a
fucking
quote.
said that.
Yeah, that's a quote.
And it's not like 30 years ago. It was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's not like it was an out of context thing. It's literally a verbatim, in context quote. If you're black and don't vote for him, you lose your black card.
Yeah. I mean, Dorf, is there? I mean, I guess I already know the answer to this question because so many people have made it clear. But are there really people out there who genuinely think that Donald Trump is so evil and fascist and racist, and the only way we can fix this is by electing Joe Biden?
I mean, you've already seen the think pieces
or are they just so entrenched in the duopoly?
It ain't Joe Biden.
R versus D. I mean,
it's the duopoly. It's the the people that we're talking about aren't necessarily enamored with Joe Biden. It's anybody but Trump. Joe Biden's a placeholder. You have, leftist media or the blogosphere or the commentary, mainstream leftist commentary. It came out months ago and fully admitted, Joe, we just need you to survive till Inauguration Day. That's all we need from you.
Sure.
And then you can be in office 5 days and then step down and we'll take it from here. That's all they want from him. He's every politician that gets to that level of elected office is a puppet to some extent or form. But it's the ultimate puppet. He fully admits that he doesn't think he's going to make it through his first term.
Yeah.
You're willing to vote for that guy?
I can't.
I know you and I won't. You and I won't. You voted. Did you vote for Gary Johnson last time? Did you actually do that? Okay.
Probably.
And
probably,
I didn't.
yeah.
I left the top of the ticket blank. I didn't vote for president or vice president because I thought it was just stupid. I felt that I didn't have any good choices, so I didn't pull. I voted for everything else.
I don't blame you. You know what, Dorf? Honestly, people view some of these things. Oh, you're fringe. You do protest votes. You do. I'm proudly going to vote for Joe Jorgensen this time around, Libertarian candidate. But I was on a Libertarian forum just the other day when people were saying, well, who do we like better, Joe Jorgensen? Who would we rather have president, Joe Jorgensen or Gary Johnson? And of course, everyone's saying Jorgensen because
she's the current nominee.
And I said, okay, what am I supposed to answer this question honestly? No, it's Gary Johnson actually. If I'm being real, I like them both. I will vote for Joe Jorgensen, and my vote only counts as one, and I will give my one vote to her like I did to Gary Johnson. But quite honestly, neither one of them are the great libertarian thinker that I would love to have. I was a Jacob Hornberger supporter going into it. A lot of people don't care about this because
that's all right. Do it.
This is fringe nonsense to a whole lot of people. And but yeah, I mean, I do support the party. This is my last vestige of statism, if you will. This is my last vestige of trying to support the system. People say, "Oh, you're outside the system. You're being fringe. You're just a protest vote." No, it's not. It's not a protest vote. The protest is, I wouldn't vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden if they filled the voting booth with Heineken and there were strippers drowning in it. There is no way I would cast a vote for one of those two people. There's not for anything. Nothing. I mean, gun to my head. Gun to your head, Josh. Biden or Trump. I'm coming, Harambe. I don't know. I mean,
by the way, the 5-year anniversary of Harambe's death was last week.
Oh, and I missed it again.
Rest in peace, our homie Harambe.
Yeah. Dick's out.
I ain't willing to go that far.
No, not anymore. But yeah, no. God rest your precious soul, Harambe.
God, the fact that that's still a gorilla being killed in a zoo because a toddler fell into his cage is still a meme 5 years later, with the average shelf life of memes being like 3 days. The fact that Harambe is still a cultural symbol is just crazy to me.
Yeah, he obviously had information on Hillary Clinton.
I have information that will lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton. The deep state threw that toddler in there so they'd have to off him.
You know it. You know it. Listen, there. You know what? There are some actual decent candidates running. You know, the Libertarian Party has provided some things that are decent. And no, I don't think that I don't think Joe Jorgensen's going to be the next president. But there are reasons to vote outside of the duopoly. Some of those reasons being, if they can get to 5%, if they get federal funding, they're going to be in future debates. There are other reasons to do it, and the time is now. I'm so sick of people saying, "Oh, I would love to vote third party, but this election is just too important." Said every normie from 1789.
Yeah, somebody who's totally focused on just the battle but not the war.
Right. And but truth be told, Dorf, the vast majority of the people in this country, I want to say a low estimate, 65 to 75% of the people in this country, although they like to pretend like they are free thinkers, the vast majority of people are going to vote for the guy with the R or the guy with the D next to their name every single time. That's the way they voted when they're 18. That's going to be the way they vote when they're 68. And that's the truth. That is it. I mean, sometimes with those people, you have a switch at age 35 or something. But
well, it's usually once you have a family and realize that you want to retire someday is when you switch from Democrat to Republican.
Sure, a lot of people do, but it's
if you're gonna switch, that's what kicks it off.
Yeah, there's no real truth to it. There's it's silly. It's funny. You don't really care what they think. There are so many people in this world that if Joe Biden came out tomorrow and said, "You know what? We found out the true thing that's killing black people in America is abortion, and the Democrats are now anti-abortion. We are now anti-abortion, and because we need to defund the police, we need to get behind the Second Amendment, and people out there really should arm themselves." Nothing would change. Nothing would change. All those people who are going to vote Democrat would still vote Democrat. They don't care. It's no big deal. And if there's some give and take and some switch, it'll just filter back and forth between the two parties, and that'll be that. Nobody cares. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. The people who vote for the D vote for the D. The people who vote for the R, they vote for the R. It's cultural. It's familial.
Man. It's team sports.
It is. It absolutely is. That's all there is to it. You're part of a team, and you're part of a tribe. Why is it right? Because my tribe said it was right. Why is it wrong? Because the other tribe said it. That's the truth. That's the truth, man. So what's up, man? We all gonna die of coronavirus? What's gonna kill us? Is it gonna be the coronavirus? Is it gonna be the murder hornets, the race wars, they're talking UFOs a lot now. All of a sudden they're popping up.
The race wars,
CIA, NASA, we're all spotting aliens and UFOs. They're everywhere.
The potential for a race war is over. Stuff's calmed down in the last week. Now it's just the folks that have nothing, not to say nothing better to do than protest, but the normies have gone home because their opportunity to take a selfie. It's like I'm part of the civil rights movement of my era. It's over. So normies have gone home, and you're not going to see a boogaloo kick off here anytime soon. What you're going to still see is pockets of chazzing, let's call it. You're going to see that. until now, between now and the next inauguration, especially if Trump wins again. You'll see that kind of stuff until it's winter again here in North America, because LARPing is cool. If push comes to shove and the establishment is actually threatened by all this communist LARPing, they will not hesitate to roll tanks and kill everybody. Because state gonna state, as state should. Proud statist here. We've done that episode. Jesus. Go back to episode 2. I think that is a legitimate authority of the state to put down insurrections. So we've done that episode, though. So go back to episode 2 if you want to hear our thoughts on that.
That's a good episode.
If it ever advances past the cute stage, it will be put down as the insurrection that it will then be turning into. Normies probably will grow disgusted of looting and childish behavior. That's what you could, describe the Chaz movement as. It's intellectual children decided they want to have a day camp in the middle of Seattle. It will fizzle out and take care of itself, or will be dealt with here soon. Big Daddy government will come give them a spanking. God, that sounds so terrible. But that's what's going on there. The attempted Maoist revolution is being maintained by mainstream media because it gets my clicks in my eyeballs. Whereas it's effectively on the streets, which is where it would be necessary to actually be successful, it's over. Not that it won't ever pop back up again, but any idea that there may be a communist insurrection, it's over. You lost the normies very quickly after it started. Your chance to swing hearts and minds, you blew it. BLM will continue to be, just like it was in the 2016 election, will be a frontline activist group that will get plenty of representation in media and politics until election day, and then will be forgot again about for 4 years, because Machiavellian as this sounds, the political establishment only cares about black issues in election years, because 90% of their vote doesn't change. 90% of the African American voting bloc doesn't change no matter what happens. So they have no reason. Republicans have no reason to do anything for you because you're not going to vote for them anyway, and Democrats have no reason to do anything for you because you're going to vote for them anyway. So
one of my favorite stats ever, Dorf, and I could be off by a numeral or two, but when Barack Obama was elected, the stat going around was that I believe Barack Obama got 95% of the African American vote
in his first time. I think that's in 2008. I think that's accurate.
Yeah, I mean, and that's oh my God, 95%. But know what? When George W. Bush beat John Kerry got 92%.
Yeah. Well, so, if you look at percentages, sure, but like total.
Were they rallying behind the first black man to take that office? I mean, that's a good story. It sounds good. That's nice.
Well,
that's nice to
voter participation percentages. Josh, though, you got to think about it this way.
I know
the real numbers.
I get it.
92% of those who voted. Just there was more people who voted in. More African Americans that voted, I believe, in the election of Barack Obama than John Kerry.
Dorf, I get that he brought voter turnout, that he brought voters out. I understand that, but that's a separate issue. If you go by the numbers, and I don't. I'm not somebody that goes by the numbers, but if you are, then you could easily say that, well, looks like, African Americans typically vote Democrat, 92%.
They have since the 60s.
So, right.
But, I mean, it's unfortunately, it as Machiavellian as this sounds, that the left is only paying lip service because they need them to show up this year. That's their only potential path to victory. is huge minority voter turnout. So Orange Man Racist is about their only play. And at the same time, guilting their white voter base into Orange Man Racist. Therefore, you should come vote for. I don't know what's a cynical nickname for Joe Biden. Grandpa Gaffs. Like I don't know.
I mean, there's the Sleepy Joe if you wanna.
I don't want to. I don't want to use. That's Trump's name for him. What can we call Joe Biden?
You're using the Orange Man Bad thing, so I didn't know if you wanted to.
Well, Orange Man Bad started as a meme, so I want a meme name for Joe Biden. Grandpa Gaffs. Let's go with that. Grandpa Gaffs. That's that's the way. That's a Machiavellian path to victory. Is Orange Man Racist, therefore vote for Grandpa Gaffs, despite Grandpa Gaffs being a terrible candidate. It's a hard bar to clear, but is Joe Biden a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
God, that is a high bar to clear.
No, I mean he is, and the thing is, Dorf, is that 2016 Joe Biden wasn't a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton. If they wanted President Joe Biden, 2016 was the chance. That was legitimately.
Well, this is what, like the 5th or 6th time Joe Biden's run for president?
Oh yeah.
He's been trying since the 80s.
Yeah. And what I want to say that before this year he had never what was the stat that
he never won a primary.
Yeah, he had
never won a primary.
It was never done better than 3rd place in a primary. I mean, can you imagine that?
He's a corporate leftist senator from Massachusetts. There's not much upside there.
Delaware,
whatever. Northeast. You know what I meant.
Yeah. New England area.
Yeah.
Dorf, I've never been a Donald Trump fan. I'm still not a Donald Trump fan. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. But as somebody who really dislikes Donald Trump, I've never quite understood the whole he's racist thing. I've never really understood
Josh, here's all you have to do to understand. You have an R next to your name. You're racist. R stands for racist, not Republican.
No, and I get that, but I get that that's the media narrative.
It's not even the media narrative. It's the major party narrative.
I just don't get why people fall for it. I don't get why people fall for it.
Because the average person is not politically engaged enough. You realize I would have to pull up the research and the stats on this, but the amount of people that vote Democrat because it means they think they're in favor of democracy and Republicans aren't is a really freaky high number. There's polling data on that, and it's creepy. Like how many people, it's not a large percentage, but the amount of raw people that vote for Democrats because they think it's pro-democracy. That level of analysis goes into deciding who they vote for.
I mean, when you're talking about polling and talking about this stuff, I mean, you realize that a majority of people on college campuses oppose women's suffrage because, women should never have to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't want women to have to suffrage. That sounds terrible.
Hey, there's a podcast that I listen to. It's a male and a female co-host. The female is pro repealing of the 19th Amendment. She's convinced everything in the country has gone wrong since women got the right to vote, and so they should lose it as a result.
Believe it or not, I won't say which one because I wouldn't want to besmirch them on a podcast. But one of my ex-wives had that opinion.
Why the hell did you?
I know it doesn't narrow it down.
Yeah. Yes, Josh
is
a multi-time divorcee. So
yeah, no, one of my ex-wives had that opinion.
Yep, she wants to repeal the 19th. And the funny part is Sarah McLaughlin, who I'm sure you're familiar with, as actor, singer, whatever, now mostly political activist. They using
she does those commercials that like to ruin your day.
The ASPCA commercials, yeah.
Yeah, let the dead dogs and shit.
If you don't give us money, we're gonna kill puppies commercials. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, they using that Cameo. Are you familiar with Cameo?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know
So
Cameo.
one of their fans paid Sarah McLaughlin to unknowingly endorse her trying to repeal the 19th Amendment. So I wonder if we have any crossover in listeners here, but
perhaps I hope so.
Those who listen to us and them will know who I'm talking about here. So, but hey, that's another show. That's another show we should do. Should the franchise require, if the ethics and policy surrounding the military draft. It's not an issue that's a front burner at all because there hasn't been a draft since Vietnam. So if you're younger than 60, in your mid 60s, you've never been subject to a draft.
An active draft.
There has not been an active draft. Well, it's still around. It's just it hasn't been. No one has been drafted since Vietnam.
Right.
So the reason it's not front burner, but I can give credence to the anti-19th people that women got the right to vote, but they didn't have to potentially go die for it. And I understand that is some of the original ideas and thoughts surrounding the franchise. Is that was part of the exchange, that we give you an option to participate here, but in exchange for that, we potentially ask for your life and service, military service, and potentially die for the country in exchange for having a vote. I get that. I'd rather see the draft go away entirely. Because
Dorf, this was the basic idea behind. This is something that's so shunned and so talked negatively about now. But the idea behind, you have to be a landowner to vote.
Well, I mean, that was at the time any sort of. I mean, there wasn't really. The entire federal government at the time was funded by tariffs, essentially.
Right.
And
even
and quite frankly, if it would be a decent tax and voting scheme if you don't get to vote on a la carte issues if you're not a stakeholder in that. So you can't get to vote on raising property taxes if you don't own property, or you don't get to vote on schools if you don't have a kid in school, or you don't have to pay for it if you don't have a kid in school either, or something like that. Which the funding levels would never work out if we decided to do that, but or we wouldn't be able to fund things at current levels if we had to a la carte vote on stuff. But
it could work, but
but it's the idea that two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
Right.
If I don't own property currently, I don't own land, so I am I have the incentive to say, fuck them. I don't pay this tax. Raise it. It doesn't affect me. I'll get to reap the benefits of this tax increase, potential benefits of this tax increase, and I don't have to pay for it. It's great.
It's a matter of having a vested interest in the decision-making process.
Well, here's another thing. I bet you so many more people would be pro small government if they actually paid tax. Had an effective tax rate above like a penny.
Right.
Yeah, because if your taxes, if you don't affect it in the average state in this union, you don't pay, and if you don't have a positive effective tax rate, this is even before you get into like percentages of service used. You don't have a positive tax rate until you make like $50,000 a year.
Right.
And quite frankly, do we want to take away the franchise from people who don't make $50,000 a year? I think that's a hill too far, or a bridge too far, but there is consequences to having not necessarily free riders, but people who don't be able to vote on how to spend other people's money. That's a terrible consequence, which is also part of the reason we've got to where we are with so much government bloat. You look at just the income curve, or and the tax burden curve. The idea that the 1% is this big evil monster, a person that belongs in the 1% pays it's the very crisp, the very edge, the beginning edge of the 1%, pays the tax burden of the average of like them and like 12 other people.
Yeah.
Like the idea that, I'm not saying we exclusively cater to the needs of the 1%, but for the love of God, they're paying your burden in 12, 11 themselves, yours, and 11 other people. I'm not saying they get an extra vote or a bonus vote or something, but like the idea that they're evil and we shouldn't, pay attention at all to their concerns. Like, come on, dude. Really?
No, I mean, and this was an easy decision back in the day when amendments were passed saying everyone could vote, one person, one vote. But nowadays, truth be told, we vote on too much crap. We shouldn't be voting. We shouldn't be voting on so many things. That's why we have elected representatives. We're supposed to be able to vote for good people, who then go there and control the government. That's the basic idea. But the idea of the initiatives and the referendums, quite frankly, they're terrible. They're terrible. You're asking, because in essence, essentially politicians use this to make it so they aren't responsible for bad legislation.
Or the referendum system is, also a way to get unpopular things on the, things unpopular with the political class on the books as law.
Right, but that's a myth that the politicians don't want them. They want them, they just don't want to be responsible for them. So then when they fail through their own policies, they can say, well, that wasn't our failure. The people voted for that.
Yeah.
So, you know what, Dorf, I have a feeling we're kind of working on wrapping up here. I don't have a ton more to say.
I don't really either. It's just like to summarize what's going on in the world today, it's the mainstream political events. This is outside of the Rona. There has been a underground communist movement ever since like communism made it to the West. Is just an academic idea. This is the first time in larger groups that they've stuck their head above ground. And the reason that they haven't been put down as the insurrectionists that they're trying to be is because they're not a threat. At this point, it's okay, pat the kid on the head. You're cute. Just go run along and play. It's because they're no threat to the greater established order, despite their wishing to be. And like I said earlier, it's the large part Maoist LARPers who think it's cute are using Black Lives Matter, the greater movement, not Black Lives Matter Incorporated, as human shields in an attempt to get one over on the man. Which is, unfortunately, for normie America, is destroying the message and the very valid criticisms, some of the very valid criticisms of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think some of them are just not based in reality, but the idea that the movement is entirely without merit, we can do that show. We could go through published tenets line by line and yeah, sure, okay, or well, that's just hooey. But that's what's the root of what you're seeing going on in current events today. The Corona lockdowns continue because people are cowards to admit they were wrong at the beginning. Outside
Absolutely.
of like 3 metropolitan hospital systems, our hospital system's never been overwhelmed. People are dying across the country. There's 2.7 million people that die in the United States every year. That number is going to be bigger this year, but it isn't an, oh my God, we're all going to, death of the world, collapse of civilization, we're all going to die levels, which is the way we acted. Fuck no. It never was going, even if we left it alone, it never was going to be. life will get back to normal, whether the politicians are ready for that, or, the political class is ready for that or not. Life can restart, as we've seen in my state here, and in Las Vegas, where I was last week, and in Florida and Texas. You don't have to come out of hiding. You're more than welcome to continue to hide. The government class is giving you access to expanded unemployment benefits, where you can probably make it work for several more months if you want to hide in your basement to avoid, the boogeyman that is Corona from getting you if you're a perfectly healthy person. The people that seem to be most concerned about it are the young and healthy ones. The ones that you're more likely to die of a lightning strike this year than die from Corona.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that don't give a fuck and are ready to get back to normal are the boomers. The ones that are most likely to be killed by it. They don't care. They're done. It's over. That's not that's a blanket statement, obviously, and I'm sure there's examples in the opposite direction.
Well, no, but it's
the older generation.
It's a correct one.
Yeah, the older generation, they're fucking done with this. They were done with it 2 months ago. The original bargain was like a 2 or 3 week deal. We're now at what? Month 4?
Yeah.
Not that I ever, not that my life terribly changed much outside of my out of work social life. I never stopped working. I work in a critical industry that, come hell or high water, will run, because its main customer is the military industrial complex. So it will run.
Dorf, can I throw out, I don't have much more to say other than this, but can I throw out, I guess it's a theory. I guess it's maybe a fringe theory, perhaps, but I'm not saying that there wasn't a coronavirus. I'm not saying that there isn't a problem with race riots or looting. I'm not even saying that there wasn't murder hornets.
Murder hornets, it's not a threat.
Murder hornets are a boss. It was a filler episode on the 2020 TV.
It was, shit, what else can we've got to fill 30 seconds here on this newscast. What can we talk about? Well, I saw something on BuzzFeed about murder hornets.
I'm not saying
that sounds cynical.
Let's Dorf. I think something seriously changed in this nation in March.
Really?
And even I believe that perhaps the Republic even fell in March, and that we're already dealing with that right now. I think it all ended.
Really?
Whether it was somebody calling in the debts, somebody taking control, military generals, the United Nations, NATO, whether it was our own political system realizing the collapse under Donald Trump. I think this thing fell apart in March, and our political system is using smoke and mirrors to try to keep it afloat, even if it's just for another 30 days. But I know that's a fringe theory. I know that. And I know that if it proves to be nothing to it whatsoever, and we just go absolutely positively back to normal in 6 months, then there is egg on my face.
Josh, I don't even think you're that far off. I think this would be a very accurate mid-April reading of what's going on. I think that might have been the case then, but the established order is, as it does, finds a way to continue itself, and has done so over the last several months. It rebounded. It was very weak and vulnerable in mid to late April, where your assessment of things here may have been accurate. I think it's recovered from that vulnerability, and it's going to continue on plodding on the way it has for the last couple centuries, and will continue to until some dynamic shift change happens. Which, I mean, this ain't it. It's going to take more than that. It probably the next World War would be the next event that could overcome that.
Perhaps, Dorf. I tend to think maybe we're there. I think we like to look at Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi as enemies. quite frankly, I think they're playing parts in theater. I think they are. I don't think they're enemies at all. I think they're a counterbalance to each other in the theater that is our political system right now. I don't think Donald Trump's calling the shots anymore. I don't think Nancy Pelosi's calling the shots anymore. I think I think something really fell apart here. And if I think my theory continues to look better and better, if another huge crisis pops up after these riots, after this looting, and yes, I will be willing to include wave 2 of the Rona if that does become a big deal.
It's not going to become a big deal.
If it's not, it's not. If it's not, it's not. And I'll stand corrected, and I'll be more than happy.
What people are mistaking of is wave 2. If this isn't wave 2 that we're in now, the more and more we learn this might be wave 2. Wave 2 will be less of a concern because this sounds so cruel, but like the weak have been culled from the herd.
Sure.
The people susceptible to viruses have been largely, the most affected here.
Dorf, I know that makes sense.
Viruses, hang on, let me finish explaining.
Okay, no, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Viruses, the longer they're out in the open air, the weaker they get. With the exception, especially respiratory infections that kill people slowly. That's what, just if we're matching trend to trend, pattern to pattern, that's the way it's always worked.
Sure.
Because if viruses get more deadly, they kill people off before they can spread them. So most of the reason you don't see everybody die from Ebola or smallpox. Well, smallpox has been eradicated through vaccination, essentially. The reason you don't see there's mass Ebola death spreading to the west and escaping Africa, even though there's a mild Ebola outbreak going on in Africa currently, is it kills people too quickly. It doesn't jump oceans and spread rapidly and get, with large incubation periods. It just doesn't happen. Sure. Thank God, because we'd all be dead from Ebola if it didn't. The respiratory viruses of this nature, I'm not a virologist, I'm not a scientist in this field, but just looking at data, matching trends, there will, if this isn't round 2 already, there will be another round. There's a chance that this is probably will become endemic. It'll just be another type of the seasonal flu. It'll be the seasonal coof or the seasonal Rona or whatever you want to call it, that will continue to exist and probably knock off in the United States 20 or 30,000 people annually until the end of time, or until there's an effective vaccination, which I have my doubts about fast track vaccines this first round, whether or not they will be an effective, just they may help people from getting it, but will they be an absolute kill switch where you can eradicate it from an entire population? Probably not. Not this round. They may be able to find one, but the first one that's coming out here is essentially a battlefield patch, and it's not going to work. It'll work, it'll help, but it's not going to just wipe it out. So it'll come back. People will cough. People will get sick. People will die, just like they do every year. But as we've seen, the ultimate disruption of civilization, for what it's cost us, we're not willing to do that. There's not the political will or the will of the citizenry to do that again, especially because there's examples such as Sweden. They didn't lock down at all. They closed like movie theaters, and that was about the only modification they made outside of highly requested masking and please work from home if you can. That's all they really did. And guess what? It's over. And you look at the data the virology data coming out of Italy. They were, you always said at the beginning, oh, they're just 2 weeks ahead of us. We're about to get crushed like Italy. 2 weeks ahead of us. The virus is over there. You look at it, the people coming in with infection rates, you look at the data on it, the viral load that people were under, the amount of virus present in people's bodies at the beginning where they were just mass death compared to what people are coming in with now, they're not even close. It's you know, on the verge of death versus mild inconvenience. That's the level of infection that's coming into hospitals or into the medical system now. Will this continue to be a minor convenience for the rest of our lives? Probably. Is there a chance that in your 70s, when you're old and infirm, or 70s and 80s, that you'll die from this? Probably. But will we get to the point where we need to shut down 20% of the economy so we don't kill grandma? Even if that is the case, it's never, there's never going to be the political will to do it. Probably ever again. Even if there was Ebola here, I doubt you'd get people to do it.
Maybe. I don't know, Dor. I don't know. I don't think there was ever the will to do it. I think we were forced to do it. But we'll see, man.
I think there was a will. I think the normies, Josh, I think you and I, the exception here. I would have called myself a normie on this. I was willing to, 2 or 3 weeks, that's the bargain. I understand. We can make that work. I don't like it, but we can make 2 or 3 week disruption work. Well, it'll be a tough pill to swallow, but if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. There's too many unknowns here. I get that. The never-ending lockdown where, oh my God, we might have to lock down again this fall and this winter because, oh my God, we're all going to die again. I don't think we'll ever, in my lifetime, I don't think whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise, you'll ever see that be able to happen again. You know, the CDC may demand it from on high, but, you know, the general public is going to be like, fuck you, dude. We don't trust you anymore. You blew it.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, this is the wrong virus to blow our load on. Let's put it that way, if that makes sense. If you were ever going to trust the mainstream medical establishment to advise policy where, oh my God, we need to pull the kill switch and shoot ourselves in the foot here to save the rest of our body, boy, did they blow the one round in their gun on this.
Yeah.
Yikes. But anyway.
Yeah, no. Hey, yeah, let's do final thoughts, Dorf. I'm good. I think this is you know, it's laid some stuff out. We both made some predictions here. We'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks, upcoming months.
What's going on? Summarize. The larger underlying thing is an attempted Maoist-style insurrection in the United States, using other protesters as shields. This the Maoist or the communist problem will not go away. It hasn't gone away, despite the Cold War being over. It's probably in a stronger position than it's ever been since like the 1950s. I am totally against making, you know, it's still technically illegal in the state of California to hold government office if you're a communist, believe it or not. I'm against like broad sweeping, like the banning of the communist ideology, because, you know, it's just like, don't touch that hot stove, toddler of mine. They'll just want to do it more just to, you know, figure out why you don't want them to do it. But the idea that there won't be a further attempted communist insurrections throughout the United States is wrong. They just showed their head in here and showed that they did have a little bit of political power and influence here. Don't be surprised that they don't try it again very soon, with a whole additional army of useful idiots in tow. The problem of communism isn't going away anytime soon. It's never going to go away in the West. It's a tempting ideology for those who are, you know, philosophically illiterate. It's tempting. It sounds great on the surface. Everybody's equal. Everybody love everybody. Just when you get down to the practice of implementing it with actual human beings, it's fucking terrible. And you know what?
Communism is just a selling point for totalitarians. That's all it's ever been.
Yeah, sure.
It's totalitarian.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I truly do believe that, you know, communism is nothing more than a selling point for totalitarianism. Totalitarianism is what elites always want. It's what they've always wanted. It's what they will always want. So they try to wrap a pretty bow on it. You know, what are you going to get? You're going to get socialism. You're going to get communism. You're going to get fascism, Nazism, imperialism. Pick one. Pick one. It doesn't matter. There's no difference between any of them. And that's what this is. That's what this is here.
Okay. Well, man, let's end on a sour note here. We're both saying that the world's going to end. Well, has it ever truly not been ending?
If the United States of America was your world, then it has ended. It has ended.
I don't think we're there. I think we showed that we were vulnerable, but I disagree that we're there. All right. Anywho, that is going to wrap up this episode 4 here of the Empire in Exile podcast. This will go live Tuesday the 16th. Next episode will be the following Tuesday. Topic to be determined. So, for Josh, I am North. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.